The kitchen light flickered just once as I stood there, gripping the counter, my heart pounding so hard it drowned out the hum of the refrigerator. The air smelled like half-burned dinner, and my hands were shaking because something my child had said wouldn't leave my head. In that moment, the house I thought I knew felt suddenly unfamiliar, almost hostile, like the walls were listening. If you're watching this and you've ever had a moment where your instincts screamed before your mind caught up, subscribe and tell me where you're listening from. Stories like this are more common than we want to believe. I remember staring at the floor, noticing a single pill rolling near my bare foot, the cold tile seeping into my skin. My thoughts raced, trying to explain it away, but my body already knew the truth. Fear settled deep in my chest, heavy and undeniable. That was the moment everything started to unravel. I remember the exact second my life split in two, standing barefoot in my kitchen, knife paused in my hand, when my daughter said something that made the room tilt. I am Emma Carter, a working mother who thought exhaustion was my biggest problem until that moment proved me wrong. A cold rush moved through my chest, sharp and instant, and my body reacted before my mind could catch up. My ears rang, my hands went numb, and every instinct I had started screaming that my child was not safe. Nothing about that evening felt dramatic on the surface. Dinner was half started, the house was quiet. Yet something invisible had crossed a line inside our home. As I looked at my daughter, pale and unsure, I felt a fear deeper than panic, the kind that settles into your bones. My thoughts raced through possibilities I did not want to name, each one worse than the last. In that frozen space, I realized this was not a misunderstanding or a bad day, but a warning that I had missed signs. I had been running on autopilot for months, juggling deadlines, school drop-offs, and the quiet pressure of always needing to be enough. My days blurred together, starting before sunrise and ending long after my daughter was asleep. I told myself this was normal, that every working parent felt stretched thin, and that tiredness explained everything. Looking back, the signs were there, just soft enough to ignore. Emma, who once filled the house with noise, grew quieter. She lingered in her room longer, moved slower in the mornings, and sometimes stared past me with an emptiness I blamed on growing up. I noticed her appetite fading, her laughter coming less easily. But I wrapped those changes in reasonable excuses. School was harder, kids change, phases pass. I remember feeling a flicker of concern and immediately talking myself out of it. I told myself I was being dramatic, that hovering would do more harm than good. Deep down, though, unease settled in my chest like a low hum I could not silence. I kept choosing comfort over confrontation, normalcy over fear. What I did not understand then was that instincts whisper before they scream. Those quiet moments were leading me somewhere unavoidable. I did not see it yet, but my hesitation was shaping what came next, stretching the space between doubt and certainty, until one moment forced me to finally listen. And once that line was crossed, there was no returning to ignorance or pretending everything was fine any longer at all. I was standing in the kitchen when my daughter said something so small, so softly, that it knocked the air out of me. It was not dramatic, it was not shouted. It was simply wrong. In an instant, every excuse I had built collapsed. My body reacted before my thoughts did. My chest tightened, my hands went cold, and a wave of fear rushed through me so fast I had to steady myself on the counter. I forced my face to stay calm while my mind spiraled. I remember nodding, breathing slowly, doing everything I could to keep my voice steady, even as alarm bells screamed inside my head. What she shared made it clear that someone else was involved, an adult I did not know. Someone who had crossed a boundary I had never imagined needed defending. In that moment, doubt disappeared. This was not stress or misunderstanding. This was danger, quiet and hidden inside our routine. I felt something ancient and fierce wake up in me, a need to protect that overpowered fear itself. I knew I had to see for myself what had been given to her, to understand what had already entered our home. As I guided her toward her room, my heart was pounding with one certainty. Whatever I found next would change everything forever. I followed her into her room and watched her open a drawer she rarely used. From it, she pulled a small white bottle that did not belong in my house. The plastic felt light in my hand, too light, and the label made my stomach drop. There was no brand name, no instructions, no doctor's name, just a single word written in pen that tried to sound harmless. I turned it slowly, listening to the faint rattle inside. Every instinct told me this was wrong. My thoughts raced through questions I did not want answers to. Who would give this to my child? Why would they think it was acceptable? How had this happened without me knowing? As the pieces started lining up, a new fear surfaced. This was not a stranger slipping through a door. This was someone with access, someone trusted enough to be inside our home when I was not there. That realization stung more than the bottle itself. Holding it made everything real. This was no longer a feeling or a suspicion. It was evidence. I felt my panic narrow into focus, fear sharpening into resolve. I knew guessing would not protect my daughter. Assumptions would not keep her safe. I placed the bottle in my purse with shaking hands and made a decision that felt heavy but necessary. I needed the truth, not reassurance. I needed someone qualified to tell me exactly what this was. I arrived at the pediatric clinic early, clutching my purse like it contained a ticking clock. This was a place I trusted, where scraped knees and fevers had always ended with reassurance. Yet that morning, the waiting room felt colder. Every sound too loud, every second stretched thin. As I sat there, my mind replayed the last few weeks, my daughter's tired eyes, the bottle in my bag. I told myself not to jump ahead, but fear does not listen to logic. It builds quietly, filling the space until there is no room left to breathe. When the examination was done, the truth settled over me slowly, and then all at once, what I had brought in was not harmless. It was medication meant for adults, something that could alter a child's body and mind in ways that do not simply fade. I learned how easily it could cause dependence, how it could dull parts of a growing brain, how serious the risks truly were. I felt anger rise beneath the shock, hot and steady. This was not a misunderstanding. Someone had knowingly crossed a line that should never be crossed. My fear shifted shape in that moment, hardening into clarity. Walking back to my car, the world looked unchanged, but I was not. I understood that protecting my daughter now meant action, not questions. Whatever safety I thought my home held was already broken, and I would not wait another day to fix it. The certainty settled deep, leaving no room for hesitation or denial anymore at all inside. After that day, my house felt different. Like the walls had shifted when I wasn't looking. Rooms I had moved through on autopilot suddenly felt unfamiliar, even threatening. I caught myself listening more closely to footsteps, noticing how quiet everything became when my husband was home, how conversations stayed shallow, almost careful. I started replaying small moments I had brushed aside before. The late arrivals, the way he avoided eye contact, how easily he accepted explanations that should have raised questions. None of it screamed danger on its own, but together it formed a pattern I could no longer ignore. Trust did not vanish all at once. It eroded, grain by grain, until I realized I was standing on something unstable. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, torn between wanting to believe I was wrong and knowing that doubt alone was enough to act. I hated the thought of disrupting our life, of accusing without proof. But every time I looked at my daughter sleeping, the choice became clearer. Peace built on denial was not safety. I understood then that whatever was happening might still be happening. That possibility sat heavy in my chest, leaving no room for hesitation. Protecting my child had to come before comfort, before marriage, before the illusion of normal. By the end of that week, my mind was made up. I could not rely on trust or hope anymore. I needed to see the truth for myself, even if it meant watching my own life from the outside, searching for answers I was afraid to find. I remember sitting at my desk, pretending to work, while my phone rested beside my keyboard like a live wire. When the notification appeared, my heart slammed so hard I thought I might black out. I opened the feed and saw my living room. Empty at first, quiet and ordinary, which somehow made it worse. Then my husband walked in, followed by a woman I had never seen before. The way they moved together told me everything before my mind could catch up. There was no hesitation, no awkwardness, just familiarity, intimacy, the kind that lives in routines. The realization of the affair landed like a dull ache, painful but strangely distant, as if my body was bracing for something worse. I did not have time to process it. The footage jumped to an earlier moment, and suddenly my daughter was there. I watched her small body enter the room, trusting and unaware. I saw the woman kneel, her hand moving toward my child with the same white bottle I had held days earlier. My breath caught as I watched my daughter grow drowsy, her movements slowing, her body folding onto the couch. What shattered me was not just what happened, but who did nothing. My husband stood there, he saw it, he allowed it. He turned away as if this were normal, acceptable, easier than intervening. I felt something inside me break cleanly in two. This was no longer about betrayal between adults. This was about a child being harmed while the person meant to protect her chose silence. Love did not excuse that. Marriage did not soften it. As I stared at the screen, tears streaming down my face, clarity settled in with terrifying calm. What I was watching could not be forgiven, explained, or undone. Whatever I thought my life was before that moment was over, and the man I married no longer existed in any way that mattered. I did not scream or collapse after watching the footage. What I felt was colder than that. It was clarity. The kind that strips away every excuse you have ever made for someone you loved. I thought about our marriage, the years built on trust, shared plans, ordinary nights that once felt safe. I had believed love meant understanding, patience, giving someone the benefit of the doubt. But as I replayed what I saw, I understood something I could no longer ignore. Love that stays silent while a child is harmed is no longer love. It becomes permission. My husband did not have to give the pills himself to be responsible. He watched. He chose ease over protection. That choice mattered more than any promise he had ever made me. In that moment, the marriage I thought I was fighting to save quietly died. Grief followed, not the loud kind, but a heavy mourning for the future I had imagined. I let myself feel that loss without bargaining with it. I did not hate him. I simply saw him clearly, and clarity leaves no room for reconciliation. That was the line I could not cross back over. I understood then that accountability was not cruelty, it was duty. Loving my child meant releasing the man who failed her and stepping forward without hesitation to do what came next. There was no turning back once that truth settled into my heart. I spent the next days moving through my life with deliberate care, as if every step mattered more than the last. The shock had settled into something steadier, and I knew fear alone could not guide me anymore. I reached out to professionals I trusted, people whose calm clarity helped me understand the weight of what I was facing and the paths available to protect my child. Each conversation tightened the knot in my chest. This was serious. It was not a private family issue that could be managed quietly. It carried legal consequences, moral responsibility, and the possibility of lasting change. Hearing that truth out loud made my hands tremble. But it also anchored me. The hardest part was considering my daughter. The idea of involving her in any way felt unbearable. I questioned myself late at night, wondering if I was asking too much, if there was a way to shield her completely. But the guidance I received reframed the fear. Protection sometimes requires bravery that looks frightening from the outside. I prepared myself to be steady for her, to explain only what she needed to know, to ensure she would never be alone. I learned to separate my anger from my actions, to move with intention instead of impulse. By the time the plan was clear, hesitation had nowhere left to hide. I understood what had to happen and when. The next step would bring everything into the open, and once it did, there would be no turning back. I breathed steady, ready for the moment ahead. I watched the screen with my whole body clenched, every muscle tight as the minutes crawled forward. My phone vibrated softly in my hand, and each buzz sent my heart racing. I kept reminding myself to breathe, to stay present, even as fear pressed hard against my ribs. When my daughter came into view, time seemed to slow. I focused on her movements, her small frame, the way she trusted the space around her. Every instinct in me screamed to rush in, to stop it myself. But all I could do was watch and wait. The moment stretched, unbearable and silent, until everything changed at once. The door opened. Figures moved quickly, and the scene shifted from stillness into motion. Relief hit me so suddenly my legs nearly gave out. The danger stopped before my mind could fully register how close it had come. I did not feel victorious. I felt emptied. Tears streamed down my face as the tension drained away, leaving behind shock and a deep, shaking calm. The screen showed adults stepping in, control being taken, the situation finally contained. When it was over, there was a strange quiet inside me. The life I had known collapsed in that instant, not with noise, but with certainty. Nothing could be fixed or smoothed over after this. What mattered was that my child was safe. I sat there long after, phone still in my hand, letting the reality settle. The threat was gone, but the aftermath was only beginning, and I knew nothing would ever return to what was. When everything stopped, I expected relief to carry me. Instead, I felt empty. The adrenaline drained away and left behind a heaviness I was not prepared for. Days blurred into appointments, paperwork, and decisions that felt too big for a body already worn down by fear. There were consequences that moved quietly but firmly into place. Legal steps followed, living arrangements changed, custody became structured and supervised, reduced to schedules and conditions that replaced what once felt natural. I agreed to everything without resistance because peace mattered more than pride, emotionally. I shut down in ways I did not recognize at first. I moved through tasks efficiently, answered questions calmly, and kept my focus narrow. At night, exhaustion settled deep into my bones. I slept, but rest never came. My mind stayed alert, listening for threats that were no longer there. Grief arrived in unexpected forms. I mourned the life I thought we had. I mourned the version of myself that trusted easily. I even mourned the clarity that crisis brings, because survival, I learned, does not feel like healing. There was no sense of victory, no clean ending, just quiet rooms and a child who needed consistency more than explanations. I understood then that safety was only the first step. What came next would require rebuilding, patience, and time. The danger was gone, but recovery had not begun. I was standing at the edge of something new, uncertain and unfinished, knowing that starting over was the only way forward. I left the old house quietly, not in a dramatic rush, but with intention. We took only what we needed, the things that felt ours, and closed the door without looking back. The new place was smaller, simpler, and imperfect, but it was ours alone, and that mattered more than space. Rebuilding did not look like healing at first. It looked like buying a new lock and checking it twice. It looked like choosing where the child's bed would go and letting them decide the color of the sheets. It looked like learning the sounds of a different street and realizing, slowly, that those sounds did not make my shoulders tense. We built routines carefully. Mornings became predictable. Evenings slowed down. Meals were simple, but they were eaten together at the same time each day. I noticed how consistency softened my child, how laughter returned in small, cautious bursts. There were quiet symbols of safety everywhere, nightlights left on without fear, windows opened for fresh air. Shoes placed by the door instead of kicked off in panic. I began sleeping through the night again, not deeply, but enough. Control returned in pieces. I chose what came into our home and who did not. I trusted my instincts without questioning them. Life was not joyful yet, but it was steady. And in that steadiness, something unexpected appeared. Peace did not rush in, but it began to settle. I could feel trust waiting nearby, not ready yet, but no longer impossible. It felt fragile, honest, earned slowly through care, patience, and time. I did not rush back into trusting anyone. After everything, caution felt like a form of love. I kept my circle small and my expectations clear, watching more than I spoke, listening to how people treated my child when they thought I was not paying attention. The person who entered our lives did so quietly. No promises, no pressure, no attempt to fill spaces that were not theirs. They showed up on time. They respected boundaries without needing them explained twice. They asked questions and waited for answers. That patience mattered more than charm ever could. What surprised me most was my child's response. There was no forced closeness, only comfort growing at its own pace. Shared laughter over simple moments, calm instead of tension. I learned to trust my child's instincts again because they had earned that trust. Inside me, something softened, not all at once, and not without fear. I still checked exits. I still needed time alone. But I noticed I was no longer bracing for harm in every interaction. Trust did not return as certainty. It returned as willingness, a willingness to sit at the same table, to share space, to believe that kindness could be consistent and safe. Fear existed, but it no longer decided. I once thought love was intensity, forgiveness stretched thin, and constant repair. Now I know love can be quiet. It can arrive without urgency and stay without effort. This love does not demand explanations or test limits. It shows itself in consistency, in plans kept, in calm conversations, in the absence of fear when a door closes at night. My body knows the difference before my mind does. My shoulders rest, my breath slows. Home feels like a place to return to, not a place to monitor. What matters most is how my child fits into this life. There is patience without performance, care without control, a sense of belonging that grows naturally, without being pushed. I watch stability take shape in small moments, and I trust it because it does not rush us. The past is still part of me. It always will be, but it no longer defines what I accept or what I tolerate. This love does not erase what happened. It honors it by being better. I feel whole, not because everything is perfect, but because nothing is pretending anymore. Peace feels earned through patience, honesty, and shared responsibility, carried forward with quiet confidence together now. I can look back now without my chest tightening. What once felt like the end of my life became the beginning of my clarity. I learned that intuition is not fear, it is information, and courage is not loud. It is choosing truth when comfort begs you to stay quiet. I came closer to danger than I ever want to admit, but I also discovered a strength I did not know I had. Healing was not forgetting or forgiving too quickly. It was deciding, again and again, to move forward honestly, to listen, to protect, to trust myself. My life is not defined by what was done to me, but by what I chose afterward. Safety became my priority. Peace became my responsibility. Love became something steady and earned. If you are watching this and something inside you feels unsettled, I hope you listen to it. You are not weak for questioning. You are brave for paying attention. Thank you for being here and hearing this story. If any part of it resonated with you, I love hear your thoughts.